The shift from worker to leader. Leadership does not begin with a promotion. It does not begin when someone gives you a fancy title, a bigger office, or a team to manage. Leadership begins much earlier. It begins when you decide that your responsibility is bigger than your own checklist. A worker waits for direction. A leader creates direction. A worker asks, "What am I supposed to do?" A leader asks, "What needs to happen next?" That small difference in thinking can completely change the course of your career and your life. A worker is usually focused on completing the assignment. A leader is focused on achieving the outcome. One wants to finish the task. The other wants to make sure the right task is being done in the first place. And that is where leadership truly starts, in the way you think. For a long time, many people believe that working harder is the only path to success. They arrive early, they stay late, they follow instructions, they complete everything placed in front of them. Hard work matters, of course. But hard work without direction can keep you busy without taking you anywhere meaningful. There is a major difference between working inside a system and learning how to improve the system itself. A worker asks, "How can I complete this faster?" A leader asks, "Why are we doing this? And is there a better way?" That is the difference between activity and effectiveness. You can spend an entire day climbing a ladder only to discover that it was leaning against the wrong wall. Leadership requires you to step back and look at the wall. It requires perspective. A worker sees a task. A leader sees how that task connects to everything else. Imagine two people working on the same construction site. One says, "I'm carrying materials." The other says, "I'm helping build something people will use for years." The work may be identical. The mindset is not. When you understand the larger purpose behind your work, ordinary responsibilities begin to carry greater meaning. You stop thinking only about your individual performance and start asking how your contribution affects the entire mission. That is why leaders constantly ask bigger questions. Where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish? What happens if we make this decision today? Who will be affected by it tomorrow? What problem are we actually trying to solve? The ability to see beyond the immediate moment is one of the greatest advantages a leader can develop. Most people are focused on the next step. Leaders learn to study the entire path. They notice patterns. They recognize risks before they become emergencies. They see opportunities before everyone else notices them. That is vision. Vision isn't simply imagining a better future. It is developing the ability to recognize where things are heading and preparing yourself and others for that direction. But leadership isn't only about vision. It is also about growth. A worker often measures success by completion. Did I finish the project? Did I hit the target? Did I meet the deadline? A leader asks another question. What did this experience teach me? Because every challenge gives you two things. It gives you a result, and it gives you an opportunity to become better. The result may disappear. The lesson can stay with you forever. A difficult project can improve your judgment. A failure can strengthen your decision-making. A difficult conversation can teach you patience. A mistake can reveal a weakness that you never knew existed. That is why leaders don't simply chase achievements. They chase development. They don't want to become successful once. They want to become the kind of person who can repeatedly create valuable results. Your achievements are limited by your current capacity. Increase your capacity, and you increase what you can accomplish. So don't only ask, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who do I need to become to achieve it? That question changes everything. Leadership also requires influence, and influence cannot be demanded. A title can give you authority, but authority alone does not create genuine commitment. People may follow an instruction because they have to. They follow an example because they believe in it. That is why the strongest leaders don't constantly tell people what standards to follow. They demonstrate those standards. If you expect discipline, become disciplined. If you expect honesty, become honest. If you expect people to keep their promises, keep yours. If you expect calmness during difficult situations, learn to remain calm yourself. People watch what you do far more closely than they listen to what you say. Your behavior becomes your real leadership message. Trust is built through repetition. One good decision doesn't create credibility. One honest conversation doesn't create character, but consistent behavior over time does. Leadership is credibility repeated until people know they can depend on you. And then comes another major shift, learning to think in systems. A worker solves the problem in front of them. A leader asks why the problem keeps appearing. If the same mistake happens every Monday, Fixing it every Monday isn't leadership. Finding out what causes it and changing the process is. That's the difference between solving symptoms and solving causes. Systems turn individual effort into repeatable performance. A checklist, a routine, a communication process, a clear standard, a better workflow. None of these things need to be complicated. The purpose of a system is simple. Make the right action easier to repeat. Workers often depend on motivation. Leaders build structure. Motivation rises and falls. Good systems keep working even when motivation disappears. And finally, leaders learn to anticipate. Workers react to events. Leaders prepare for them. They don't try to predict every detail of the future. They simply study patterns and ask better questions. What could go wrong? What might change? What will we need 6 months from now? What happens if demand increases? What happens if our current plan fails? Preparation creates calm. When everyone else is surprised, the prepared person already has options. That is why some leaders appear unusually calm during difficult moments. It isn't always because they are fearless. Often, they have already considered the possibility. They have thought ahead. They have prepared themselves mentally. And none of this matters if you cannot lead yourself. Self-leadership is the foundation beneath everything else. Before managing a team, learn to manage your time. Before demanding discipline from others, practice discipline yourself. Before expecting consistency from your team, become consistent in your own commitments. Your daily habits reveal your readiness for greater responsibility. How you behave when nobody is watching matters. How you respond when things don't go according to plan matters. How you handle pressure matters. How quickly you recover from mistakes matters. You don't need to be perfect, but you need to be responsible for your own behavior. That is where leadership begins. Eventually, there comes a moment when you realize that leadership is not a position you wait for. It is a mindset you practice. You stop saying, "That's not my responsibility." You start saying, "How can I help improve this?" You stop waiting for someone to solve the problem. You start looking for the first step you can take. You stop measuring your value by how busy you are. You start measuring it by the value you create. The worker focuses on activity. The leader focuses on impact. The worker protects their assignment. The leader protects the mission. The worker asks, "What do I get?" The leader asks, "What can I build?" And perhaps the most important question is this: what am I becoming through the work I'm doing? Because leadership is not something that suddenly appears when someone promotes you. It is built quietly through your decisions, your habits, your discipline, your thinking, and your willingness to take ownership. You don't have to wait for permission to start. You can begin today. Think beyond your task. Look for the bigger picture. Improve your skills. Build better systems. Prepare for what comes next. Lead yourself before attempting to lead anyone else. And most importantly, take responsibility for the direction of your life. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to create your path and start taking responsibility for where you're going, something changes. You are no longer simply completing work. You are creating value. You are no longer just following direction. You are developing direction. You are no longer simply working harder. You are learning to think better. And that is the real transition. Not from employee to manager, not from worker to boss, but from following responsibility to owning it. That is where leadership begins.